In December 1941, a British submarine vanished beneath the waves of the Mediterranean. The wreck was silent, no distress call, no survivors, or so everyone thought. Then, months later, a man turned up. He claimed he had been aboard that very sub, that he had survived the sinking and swum 5 miles to shore. His name was John Capes, and this is his story. And remember, viewer discretion is advised. John Capes wasn't a submariner. He was a 31-year-old Royal Navy stoker, part of the working-class engine room crew who kept ships running below deck. Born in 1910, Capes was known as a strong swimmer, a rugby player, and something of a thrill seeker. By late 1941, the war had scattered the British Navy across the world. Capes had been stationed in Malta and was heading to Alexandria in Egypt to rejoin another ship. But instead of taking a standard route, he accepted an unofficial lift on board the HMS Perseus, a British submarine heading west through dangerous waters. He was hitching a ride with a bottle of rum and, according to some, more stories than medals. Wartime logistics were unpredictable, and informal arrangements like these weren't uncommon. So he boarded Perseus as an unofficial passenger, carrying just a small kit bag and his rum. Because he wasn't on the manifest, his presence was unknown to higher command. He'd been given a spare bunk in the aft section near the engine room, well behind the control room and torpedo compartments. It was a quieter part of the vessel, out of the way of regular crew activity, and by pure chance, it would save his life. The HMS Perseus was launched in 1929, a Parthian-class submarine, nearly 300 feet long, armed with torpedoes and rigged for stealth. By 1941, she was a hardened veteran of the Mediterranean campaign, under the command of Lieutenant Commander N.R.D. Linton, a respected and experienced officer. The crew totaled 60 men officially. Most were seasoned submariners, familiar with the risks of enemy waters. The Perseus had been laying mines, dodging patrols, and lurking beneath hostile waters off the coast of Greece. But no one expected what came next. It was the night of December 6, 1941. HMS Perseus was cruising submerged near the coast of Kefalonia, a Greek island in the Ionian Sea, on a covert patrol mission. Conditions were deceptively calm. The sea above was still, and inside the sub, the atmosphere was routine. Until, in an instant, everything changed. At approximately 10 p.m., the submarine struck an Italian naval mine, part of a hidden defensive minefield laid by Axis forces. The explosion tore through the forward part of the vessel, blowing open the bow and flooding compartments with terrifying speed. The lights went out. Screams and metal groans filled the narrow, pitch-black corridors. Water surged in like a fist. Pressure slammed hatches shut and trapped crew in compartments. Most never had a chance. The submarine plummeted bow first, settling on the seabed some 52 meters below the surface. In a matter of seconds, the HMS Perseus was gone. No distress signal, no flares, just silence and black water. In the aft section, John Capes and 3 others survived the initial blast. They had been in the engine room at the very rear of the vessel, just far enough from the impact zone. Everything forward of them was flooded or crushed, but they weren't safe. The hull was leaking, and the air was growing thick with oil and fumes. Time was short. There was no panic in Capes' account, but there was urgency. Their only chance was the escape chamber, a small vertical shaft designed for last resort emergencies. Capes located 4 Davis Submerged Escape Apparatus sets, or DSEA for short, rubber oxygen rebreather vests, and helped the other men put them on before donning one himself. The depth gauge revealed they were 82 meters, 270 feet below the surface, far deeper than the escape apparatus's safe limit of 32 meters, 100 feet. Attempting to escape from that depth, using the emergency hatch was almost certain death. But staying inside meant certain drowning. And that bottle of rum he brought aboard? He had later claimed that he took a few swigs from it before attempting what would become one of the most dangerous submarine escapes in history. Whether that was for courage or shock absorption is anyone's guess. So, faced with no real choice, they prepared for the perilous ascent. Capes climbed into the escape hatch, sealed it behind him, flooded the chamber, and waited. The Davis submerged escape apparatus provided oxygen and slowed his rise. But the pressure and risk of decompression sickness were immense. Then, against the odds, Capes broke the surface of the water. The other 3 men were nowhere in sight. It was night, the sea rough, and the only land in sight was the silhouette of cliffs off in the distance. He treaded water for hours, assuming the others didn't make it. He then began swimming toward the faint outline of the rocky coastline. After a grueling 7 hours, he collapsed on shore, exhausted, freezing, and barely alive. He had swum over 5 miles after escaping the sunken HMS Perseus, a feat most would never attempt, let alone survive. But survival on land was no guarantee of safety, and his journey was far from over. John Capes washed up on the coast of Kefalonia, which, like much of Greece at the time, was under Axis occupation. Primarily the Italian forces, with German patrols not far off. As a British serviceman behind enemy lines, Capes couldn't simply walk into a village and ask for help. Fortunately, he didn't have to. He was discovered by local Greek islanders who risked everything to hide and care for him. Over the next 18 months, Capes was moved from village to village, sheltered in remote homes, barns, and even caves. Despite food shortages and constant patrols, the locals never gave him up. One island family even dressed him in peasant clothes and taught him basic Greek to help him blend in. He repaid them by helping with manual labor and remaining completely hidden, never attempting contact with Allied forces for fear of being captured. Finally, in May 1943, with help from the underground resistance, Capes was smuggled off the island aboard a small fishing vessel. He was picked up by a British naval craft and returned to Allied territory. Over a year and a half after he had supposedly died, he emerged weakened but alive, the only person ever known to survive a deep-sea submarine sinking and swim to safety. When John Capes returned to Allied command in 1943, he expected recognition for his incredible survival. Instead, he was met with doubt. The official records listed 60 men aboard HMS Perseus, all presumed lost. Capes' name wasn't on any manifest. To the Royal Navy, he simply hadn't been there. His story of escaping a submarine, sunk over 170 feet deep, swimming miles in darkness, and surviving behind enemy lines was so extraordinary that many dismissed it outright. The sunken sub had also not been located, adding to the doubt. A note attached to his file read, "The whole of this escape should be treated with reserve, as there are various incidents difficult to account for," suggesting it might be an exaggeration or misunderstanding of events. Even seasoned submariners found it difficult to believe that anyone could survive such a descent without fatal injury. But Capes never wavered in his account. In his own words, he described the terrifying silence of the deep, the violent rush of compressed air, and the agonizing swim to shore. "I was sure death was waiting at every stroke, but the choice was to try or be drowned alive." Despite his courage, the lack of official proof, and his absence from the ship's roster, kept his story locked away as a shadowy legend, doubted by many and accepted by few. John Capes lived the rest of his life quietly, never receiving formal recognition from the Royal Navy for his extraordinary escape. He passed away in 1985, his incredible story still doubted by many. He carried the weight of survival alone. On December 26, 1997, more than half a century after the HMS Perseus sank, a team of Greek divers discovered her wreck lying 170 feet below the surface, several miles off the coast of Kefalonia. The damage was unmistakable. The cracked hull of the bow matched the pattern of a mine explosion, confirming what had long been suspected. But the most startling evidence was at the stern. The escape hatch was open. Further dives revealed more remarkable details. Divers noted that the DSEA locker was missing one unit, exactly as Capes had said. The stern compartment held no bodies, consistent with the idea that some men had escaped through the hatch. And, perhaps most telling, an empty bottle of rum lay forgotten inside, a haunting echo of John Capes' own account. Near a bunk placed inside a torpedo rack, divers found the sluice valve of the underwater flare gun left open, another subtle sign of emergency use. Intriguingly, the submarine's depth gauge was broken and showed 270 feet, deeper than the actual depth, underscoring the extreme danger Capes faced. Even at 170 feet, surviving a submarine sinking and escaping using the Davis submerged escape apparatus was unprecedented. John Capes had, in fact, set a new record for submarine escape survival. 12 years after his death, the physical evidence from the Perseus finally vindicated his incredible story, turning what had been dismissed as legend into documented fact. The sea had kept its secret for decades, but in the end, it gave the truth back. John Capes survived an escape that many believed was impossible. Surfacing from a depth considered fatal with nothing but a rebreather and sheer willpower. Yet, instead of recognition, he was met with doubt and dismissal, thought of as a con. It took decades and the discovery of the Perseus wreck for his story to be validated. Sometimes, the truth lies hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. If this story gripped you like it did us, consider subscribing for more real-life mysteries from the shadows of history. Drop a comment. Do you believe Capes' instincts, or was it pure chance that led him to survive? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And like and subscribe for more true stories from the edge of the unknown. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your mind even more so.